April 8, 1943. Northern France. A cold stretch of farmland sits under a sky thick with low clouds. The fields are quiet, except for the uneven hum of a struggling motorcycle engine. Corporal Lydia Harper of the American Women's Army Corps grips the handlebars with stiff fingers. She isn't supposed to be this close to the front, but orders had shifted fast that morning. A courier had been wounded. A coded packet still needed to reach the nearest Allied relay station, and Lydia volunteered without hesitation. The road is narrow. Mud sprays up behind her in long streaks. Every few seconds she glances at the tree line. The war feels close today. Too close. A gust of wind cuts across her face like a knife. You can almost feel that sting yourself. The smell of damp soil. The distant rumble of artillery. The awareness that she's alone out here. Ahead, the road bends. A small stone bridge crosses a narrow stream. She slows. Something about the stillness raises the hair on her neck. Then she sees it. A shredded French resistance armband lies in the center of the bridge. Fresh. The fabric is wet, pressed into the mud by a boot print that leads straight into the trees. Lydia doesn't speak. She doesn't breathe. She just reaches slowly for the pistol strapped to her thigh. A twig snaps to her right, another behind her. Before she can turn, a rifle barrel pushes against her shoulder blade. German voices erupt around her, harsh, commanding. She's yanked off the motorcycle and shoved to her knees. A squad of Wehrmacht gendarmerie, the dreaded field police, surround her. They rip the courier bag from her chest. Papers spill out. One officer kneels, scanning the markings, his face tightening when he sees the code stamps. Amerikanische Soldaten, he mutters. American soldier. He says it like it's an insult. Lydia tries to stand, but a boot slams into her back. The officer looks at her uniform again, eyes narrowing with something colder than suspicion. Something closer to disgust. Women in uniform weren't supposed to be here. Not fighting. Not carrying classified documents. In the eyes of many German units, especially the more ruthless gendarmerie detachments, female soldiers were not protected by the same conventions as men. Some didn't consider them soldiers at all. Lydia doesn't know that yet, but she feels it. She feels it in the way they look at her, in the way they argue in sharp whispers, glancing at her like a problem rather than a prisoner. One of them lifts her chin with the tip of his rifle. He studies her face, then speaks to the others. Lydia can't understand all of it, but she catches one word. Example. Example. The officer steps back. Two soldiers grab her arms. Hard. The kind of grip that makes you understand something terrible is coming. And it hits her. They don't plan to take her to a camp. They don't plan to treat her like a captured soldier. They don't plan to treat her according to any rule she knows. A cold wave climbs her spine. The officer signals toward the woods. Whatever they're about to do, it won't happen here. As they drag her off the road, she turns her head just enough to see the shredded resistance armband again. Not torn by accident, torn as a warning. And Lydia finally realizes she stepped into something far darker than she imagined. Something other female soldiers across Europe have already learned the hard way. She just hasn't learned it yet. The forest closes around them fast. Thick branches lock out what little daylight is left. Lydia's boots drag across wet leaves as the gendarmerie pull her deeper between the trees. Every few steps, one of them shoves her forward like they're trying to break her balance on purpose. Her breath turns sharp. Cold. Loud. Too loud. They stop in a small clearing where the earth dips into a shallow trench. An old hunting shack leans against a dead oak, its roof half collapsed. Smoke stains darken the wood. Someone used this place recently. Two soldiers push her inside. The shack smells like damp straw and burned metal. A rusted lantern hangs from a nail. The only light comes from a narrow gap in the boards where the wind slips in with a soft hiss. Lydia steadies herself against the beam, wrists burning where their hands dug into her skin. One soldier stays by the door. Another searches her pockets. A third rifles through her courier bag again, muttering under his breath. The officer steps in last. He closes the door behind him. For a moment, nobody speaks. The air thickens. Lydia hears her own heartbeat, quick and uneven. Then he starts the interrogation. At first it sounds routine. Name, rank, unit, where she was headed, who she was delivering the encrypted envelope to. She answers with steady, trained restraint. She's been through drills. She knows what she can say and what she can't. But it becomes clear within minutes that this interrogation isn't about information. The officer barely reacts to her answers. He watches her face instead, studying every flicker of fear or hesitation. "You are far from where your kind belong," he says finally. "Your kind." The words hit harder than any shove. He steps closer. Lydia can smell the tobacco on his coat. She can see the mud dried along the seams of his boots. He isn't treating her like a captured enemy. He's treating her like someone who stepped across a boundary she was never meant to cross. He asks why a woman is carrying coded documents, why Americans allow it, why British and French women fly planes, why the Soviets send women to the front with rifles. He asks the questions like he already knows the answers and hates them. Lydia keeps her chin up, but her hands start to shake. She tucks them behind her to hide it. Outside the shack, another soldier drops something heavy into the dirt. Chains. Their metallic clatter breaks whatever confidence she still had. The officer hears it too, and he smiles. Not a warm smile, not even a cruel smile, just a cold, knowing one, the kind that tells her the rules she trained under won't save her here. "You are not a prisoner of war," he says quietly. "You are a message." Lydia feels the ground drop under her. A message, not a soldier, not even a prisoner. Something they intend to use. She tries to pull back, but two soldiers grab her arms. A third steps behind her with the chains. The officer watches with calm interest, like this is routine. Women who take up arms, he says, almost reflective, they must be made to understand. The door creaks open. A burst of cold air rushes in, and someone else is pushed inside. A French woman. Young, dirty, hands tied behind her back. Her resistance armband is torn just like the one Lydia saw on the bridge. Her eyes meet Lydia's. And that's when Lydia understands something even worse. She isn't the first woman they've taken. She won't be the last. And whatever these men have done before, they're preparing to do again. The officer nods toward the shack wall. The soldiers drag both women closer to it. The chains rattle. And the lantern flickers like it doesn't want to watch. The chains never touch Lydia. Not yet. A loud shout echoes outside the shack, sharp enough to make everyone pause. A messenger runs up to the doorway, breathless, mud splattered across his tunic. He salutes the officer and whispers something fast in German. The officer's expression shifts. Annoyance, frustration, and then calculation. He steps toward Lydia and the Frenchwoman, looking at them like two problems he has run out of time to solve quietly. "Change of plans," he mutters. He nods, and the soldiers pull the chains back. The tension doesn't ease. If anything, it thickens, because the look in their eyes tells Lydia the danger hasn't passed. It has only changed shape. Two soldiers shove Lydia and the Frenchwoman out of the shack and into the cold clearing. The wind hits like sandpaper against their faces. The forest muffles the sound of distant engines, German trucks moving along a nearby supply road. They push the women toward a shallow pit near the tree line. Lydia stumbles, catching herself on an exposed root. The Frenchwoman whispers, "They think we're spies." It's barely a sound, just a tremble in the air, but Lydia hears it, and it freezes her, because she knows what the Germans do to spies. And to them, a woman carrying coded documents looks exactly like one. The officer joins him outside, his boots crunching against the frostbitten leaves. He gestures at the pit like he's showing them a map, not a warning. "This is where unauthorized enemy agents are dealt with," he says. His voice is calm. Too calm. The Frenchwoman closes her eyes for a moment. Lydia forces herself to breathe slowly. Even though the cold is cutting through her uniform, she remembers every briefing she ever heard about German field police. The intimidation tactics, the mock executions, the psychological breaks they use to pry open prisoners without leaving evidence. She realizes that's what this is, a performance, a demonstration meant to crush resistance before the real interrogation begins. Two soldiers rack their rifles. The sound echoes through the forest like a door slamming shut. Lydia's pulse slams in her ears. Her knees weaken. For a second she wonders if they really intend to fire, or if this is the last moment she'll ever see a sky, even a gray one. The officer steps close enough for her to see the frost on his eyelashes. "You want to serve as soldiers," he says softly. "Then you will learn the cost." A rifle lifts. The forest goes silent. The entire world shrinks to the click of a safety lever. Lydia can't stop shaking. Her breath fogs the air in uneven bursts. She thinks of her barracks, her friends, the letters she never finished writing. The rifleman lowers his aim and fires into ground at her feet. The dirt explodes upward. Lydia jerks back with a sharp cry she tries to swallow. The Frenchwoman collapses to her knees. The officer watches both women closely, taking in every flinch, every crack in their composure, every sign of fear he can use later. He doesn't need to hurt them to break them. He just needs them to believe he will. Two soldiers grab the women and pull them away from the pit. Lydia's legs barely move as she's dragged back through the clearing. They tie their hand behind their backs, not with chains, but rough rope, and lead them toward the road. The officer walks at the front, not looking back. Whatever comes next won't be quick. It won't be clean. And it won't follow any rule of war Lydia ever learned. But one thing becomes clear as they march. They aren't taking her to a camp. They're taking her somewhere worse. Somewhere off the books. Somewhere meant for prisoners who aren't supposed to return. They march for almost an hour. The forest thins into open farmland. In the distance, half hidden behind a row of bare poplars, sits a long concrete structure with a sagging roof and boarded windows. No flags, no markings, no guard tower. Just an anonymous shell in the middle of nowhere. The kind of place armies use when they want to ask questions. The Germans call it Das Grauhaus, the Gray House. Lydia doesn't know the name. She only knows how her stomach drops when she sees the soldiers stationed outside. They aren't regular infantry. Their uniforms carry no unit patches. Their ranks are scratched off. Their faces give nothing away. Places like this aren't written into wartime memoirs. They aren't photographed. And the people taken inside rarely leave with records. The ropes around Lydia's wrists burn with each step. The Frenchwoman beside her limps, wincing each time her foot hits the ground. Every few seconds she glances at Lydia, as if trying to anchor herself to something solid. The officer leading them finally stops at a metal door bolted shut from the outside. He knocks twice. A sliding panel opens. A guard peers out, eyes narrowing at the sight of the two women. He steps aside. The door groans open. Cold air spills out, carrying the sharp bite of disinfectant and damp stone. Lydia walks into a hallway lined with bare bulbs dangling from frayed wires. A generator hums somewhere deep in the building. The door slams behind them. The officer gives a short order. Lydia and the Frenchwoman are pulled down a corridor that curves like a spine. The walls are scratched, not in any recognizable language, just frantic marks from people who needed something to hold on to. They stop at a room with a small barred window. A single wooden chair sits in the middle, a bucket in the corner. Nothing else. A guard pushes Lydia inside. Another drags the Frenchwoman further down the hall. Lydia feels a jolt of panic at the sudden separation. "Wait!" she starts, but the door shuts in her face. The guard turns the key. The lock clicks like the turning of a clock that isn't measuring time, but patience. Her breath fills the room. Too loud, too fast. She tries the window. It's barely the width of her hand. Beyond it is a patch of gray sky, and the top edge of a fence strung with wire. Escape is impossible. Minutes pass, or maybe an hour. Her sense of time melts in the cold. She tries to steady her breathing, but the silence pushes in from all sides. Finally, the officer enters. He pulls the chair back, sits down, and lights a cigarette. Smoke coils through the air. He doesn't ask questions yet. He studies her again, the same way he did in the shack, not looking for intelligence, looking for weaknesses. He taps Ash onto the floor. "You understand where you are?" he asks. Lydia doesn't answer. He leans forward. "There is no official record of this place," he says. "No one knows you are here. Your army will assume you were killed or captured by a regular unit. Not us. His words sink in heavy as stone. He continues. Female combatants create problems. Propaganda problems. Morale problems. Questions about what the enemy is willing to do and how far they're willing to go. He pauses. And when you remove a problem quietly, you avoid all of that. Lydia feels her pulse race again. He stands and walks to the door. Cooperate, he says. It makes what comes next easier for everyone. He knocks once. The door opens. But instead of more soldiers, another woman is pushed inside. She can barely stand. Her uniform is British, though torn and faded. Her hair is cropped short. Her face is hollowed by exhaustion, but her eyes burn with a sharp, stubborn fire. Lydia recognizes the badge on her sleeve. Air Transport Auxiliary. A ferry pilot. The officer gestures toward her. Meet someone who has been here longer than you, he says. The British pilot lifts her chin, refusing to look defeated. You don't tell them anything, she says, her voice hoarse but steady. No matter what they say, no matter what they threaten. Lydia swallows hard, because once you start talking, the pilot says softly, they never stop. The officer watches both women with cold amusement. Then he snaps his fingers. Guards step in. They reach for Lydia. Not to harm her. Not yet. But to take her somewhere deeper inside the building. Somewhere quieter. Somewhere where even a faint light from a small window can't reach. As they drag her down a darker hallway, Lydia realizes something awful. The gray house isn't for interrogation. It's for breaking people. And she is only at the beginning. The guards pull Lydia into a wing of the building that feels different from the rest. The air is colder. The lights dimmer. Even the sound changes. The hallway seems to swallow every footstep before it can echo. They stop at a steel door with a small square cut into the center. No window. No markings. Just a black rectangle of nothing. A guard unbolts it. Inside is a concrete room with no furniture, no vents, and no light except a bare bulb hanging from the ceiling. The bulb flickers once, then steadies with a low electrical buzz. They push Lydia in. The door shuts, and the silence hits her like a wall. She turns in a slow circle. The walls look close, even though the room is maybe 10 feet wide. There's no bed, no cot, no chair, no bucket. Just a square cell meant to force a person inward into their own mind. Lydia sits on the floor, her back to the wall. The concrete steals the warmth from her body almost instantly. Minutes pass, or maybe hours. There's no clock, no window, no sense of time. The bulb stays on until it hurts her eyes. Then suddenly it cuts out. She gasps in the pitch blackness, hands instinctively reaching for a wall just to anchor herself. When the bulb snaps back on a few minutes later, she blinks hard, disoriented. Light, darkness, silence, light again, a rhythm with no pattern, a tactic meant to wear down the sense of reality. She presses her palms against the floor, focusing on the cold, something real, something she can hold on to. A scraping sound breaks the silence, metal against metal. The door opens. 2 guards enter, dragging a small wooden table and setting it in the center of the room. On it is a metal tin, a pair of gloves, and a thick folder held shut by a leather strap. The officer follows him inside. He looks as calm as ever. You will answer questions, he says. Not now, but soon. He opens a folder and flips through pages Lydia can't see from where she sits. Reports, maps, possibly intercepted Allied messages. Then he stops on a photograph. He holds it up so she can see. It's the French courier armband from the bridge. The same one she spotted minutes before the ambush. Your resistance friends were careless, he says. One of them talked. Lydia's throat tightens. She remembers a young French woman being dragged away in the hallway. She hopes that the officer is lying. But he isn't the type who needs to invent stories. The truth is easier for men like him. He puts the photograph down. You carried a coded packet, he says. That alone makes you valuable. He steps closer. But here, value only buys time. not safety. The bulb flickers again. Lydia forces herself not to look away, not to blink, not to give him the satisfaction of seeing her break. He closes the folder and hands it to a guard. "Leave her," he orders. When the guards file out and the door slams shut again, Lydia tries to breathe through the rising panic, because now she understands the purpose of this place. Not to gather intelligence, not to punish, not even to intimidate, but to erase people, to make them disappear quietly, one piece at a time. She crawls to the corner and rests her head against the wall. The bulb buzzes overhead. Somewhere down the hall, a woman screams, not from pain, from terror, and the sound stops too quickly. Lydia's chest tightens. The officer said she had value, but value runs out fast in places like this. And the next time the door opens, she knows they'll expect something more from her than silence and fear, something she isn't ready to give. Lydia doesn't know how long she stays in that corner. The buzzing bulb keeps cutting in and out, turning the room into an on-off world where she can't trust her eyes or her sense of time. At some point, she starts counting the seconds between each flicker just to keep her thoughts organized, but even that slips away when the darkness stretches too long. Her body aches from the cold floor. Her fingers tingle from lack of circulation. Her throat feels tight and dry. Then, soft footsteps outside. Not boots. Shoes. The door opens with a hiss. A guard steps in, but this one looks different from the others. Older, gray in his beard. His eyes flick to Lydia, then shield themselves quickly behind a neutral expression. He puts a small metal cup on the floor. Water. Lydia stares at it, like she's not sure it's real. The guard doesn't speak. He doesn't come closer. He simply sets the cup down, steps back, and closes the door again. The lock clicks. Lydia crawls forward and drinks in small, steady sips. The water tastes metallic, but it cuts the dryness in her throat. She sets the cup down and tries to breathe evenly. They want her weak, but not dead. Not yet. She lies back against the wall and closes her eyes for a moment. That's when she hears something faint, barely a sound. A soft tapping from behind the wall. 3 taps. A pause. Then 2 more. She freezes. The pattern repeats. 3. Pause. 2. Someone is tapping deliberately. A code. Not Morse, not exactly. But some field units use similar patterns to signal, "I'm here," or "Are you alive?" Lydia hesitates, then lifts her hand and taps twice with her knuckle. The tapping on the other side stops. Then 1 tap. Pause. 1 more. Someone is acknowledging her. Someone close. She inches toward the wall and whispers, "Who's there?" Silence. Then a voice, raw, thin, but still steady enough to carry a message through the crack in the concrete. "British pilot," the woman whispers. "Name's Elise." "You." Lydia feels a flood of relief she didn't expect. Lydia Walters, Women's Army Corps. There's a pause, then a strained chuckle. They're going after women now, too. Figures. For a moment, the room doesn't feel as crushing. Elise continues, voice faint but firm. "They rotate us, move us from room to room. Don't let us talk. Don't let us sleep. Don't let us think straight." Lydia presses her palm flat against the wall, as if she can somehow reach through it. "How long have you been here?" Lydia asks. Elise hesitates. "Long enough to learn something important." Lydia leans in. "They can scare you," Elise says softly. "They can isolate you. They can throw you into the dark until you forget what day it is." She pauses. "But they can't read your mind. They can't take what you refuse to give." A loud clang echoes down the hall. Lydia flinches. "They're coming," Elise whispers. "Listen, when they question you, focus on something real. A face, a place, something that belongs to you. That's how you stay sane." Footsteps approach. Elise whispers fast. "Remember this. They want you to feel alone. You're not." Keys jingle. The taps stop instantly. Lydia scrambles back to her corner just as the door swings open. 2 guards enter. The older one stand behind them, eyes down, face unreadable. The officer steps into the doorway. He looks at Lydia like she's a book he's about to open. Get up, he says. The next phase begins. Her legs shake as she rises, but she doesn't let her voice tremble. I'm not telling you anything. The officer smiles faintly. Everyone says that. 2 guards step forward and grab her arms. Lydia takes one last glance at the wall where Elisa's voice had come through. She straightens her back. Whatever happens next, she's not walking into it as someone broken. She's walking into it as a soldier. And that shift, small as it is enough to worry the officer. The guards drag Lydia into a different part of the gray house. This corridor is nothing like the others. It's wide, with several doors spaced evenly along the walls. Each one has a number stenciled on it in black paint. No labels, no files hanging beside them, just stark white numbers against cold steel. It feels like a place designed for a single purpose. And none of those purposes are humane. The officer walks ahead, hands behind his back, boots hitting the floor in a slow, deliberate rhythm. Lydia tries to match her breathing to the sound, but each step feels like it pulls her further from the outside world. They stop at room 5. The officer turns to her. This is where we talk, he says, or where you learn why silence is a mistake. Lydia forces her chin up. I know my rights under Geneva. He cuts her off with a laugh that doesn't reach his eyes. There is no Geneva here. He nods to the guards. They unbolt the door and push her inside. The room is small, but unlike her cell, it has a table and 2 chairs. A lamp sits on the table, pointed directly at the chair where Lydia is forced to sit. Its light is harsh and white, aimed straight at her eyes, so she can't see the far side of the room clearly. A classic, simple tactic. Use the light to blur her vision. Use the shadows to hide his expressions. Make her guess what mood he's in before he speaks. The officer sits opposite her. He opens a new folder, this one thicker, filled with reports, intercepted messages, and hand sketch maps. Some belong to the French resistance. Some to American logistics networks. Some are likely fabricated just to confuse her. He taps a page with one finger. You travel with a courier, he says. A woman carrying coded material. You knew what was in it. I didn't, Lydia says. He leans back. You were seen studying the packet before capture. That's not true. He nods slowly, as if agreeing. You're right. It's not. But lies are useful if they make you talk. He slides the paper aside. Another guard enters carrying a small wooden box. He sets it on the table. Lydia watches closely, searching for anything threatening, but when the officer opens it, she finds nothing more than pencils, erasers, and blank sheets of paper. He pushes the box toward her. Draw what you remember from the courier packet, he says. Even small details. Lydia stares at the pencils. This is how they do it. Not by hurting her, not by shouting, but by making her feel like she's already betrayed someone by participating. She pushes the box away. I'm not telling you anything. The officer doesn't get angry. He doesn't even frown. He simply closes a folder and stands. Room 7, he tells the guards. Lydia's blood runs cold. Room 7. She heard a woman screaming from that direction earlier, not from pain, but from terror. The guards pull her up from the chair. Lydia digs her heels into the floor, refusing to move at first, but they're too strong. As they drag her into the corridor, a small voice calls out from behind one of the doors. Hold on, American. Elise. Her voice is thin but sharp. You're stronger than they think. The guards ignore it. The officer doesn't even turn his head. But Lydia hears it, and that single sentence feels like a hand grabbing her shoulder, pulling her back from the edge. They stop in front of room 7. The officer takes a breath and straightens his uniform, as if preparing for a performance. This room, he says quietly, shows you what time feels like when no one counts it. The door unlocks. The hinges groan. But before they can push her inside, someone appears at the end of the corridor. A German officer, younger, rank markings still intact, his face tight with urgency. He walks quickly toward them. Herr Hauptmann, he says to Lydia's interrogator, you're needed immediately. Orders from division headquarters. The older officer's jaw tightens. Now! Now! The younger one confirms. The older officer glances at Lydia, annoyed, but he doesn't argue. He motions to the guards. Return her to holding. This isn't finished. He walks away fast, boots echoing down the hall. The younger officer watches Lydia for a moment, then gives her a single brief look, something between warning and sympathy. Then he turns and follows the other man down the corridor. The guards pull Lydia back toward her original cell. But something has changed, because now she knows two things. Elise is still alive, and not all German soldiers in this place are fully committed to what happens here. A small advantage, a sliver. But sometimes a sliver is enough to change the course of prisoners' fate. The German patrols adjusted their route after the third body was found. They doubled their numbers. They staggered their movements. They even brought dogs. Orders were simple. Find the ghost with a bow. But Peter had already moved deeper into the trees. He knew the forest better than any map maker. He knew every ridge, every shadow, every hollow log that swallowed sound. That night, fog rolled across the ground like spilled milk. The moon barely reached the forest floor. The air didn't move. Even the crickets stopped. Peter climbed an old oak and settled into branches with the patience of a stone. Below him, a German squad spread out in a loose circle. They whispered to each other, guns shaking in their hands. Every one of them had heard the stories by now. A man with a medieval weapon, arrows appearing from nowhere, soldiers dropping without a sound. One of them muttered, "He is not human." Another said, "If you see anything, shoot." Peter waited. He didn't need all of them, just one. Fear would handle the rest. The squad paused to study footprints in the mud. While their eyes were down, Peter drew an arrow, exhaled and released. The arrow hit its mark. A single man dropped into the fog, without a cry. The others froze. Nobody moved. Their breaths turned loud and uneven. Peter was already knocking the next arrow. A second soldier dropped. Then a third. The Germans broke. They abandoned formation and ran in every direction, crashing through bushes, tripping over roots, shouting into the darkness. Peter didn't chase. He didn't need to. Panic was faster than any bullet. When the last of them had disappeared down the ravine, he slipped down the tree, retrieved what arrows he could, and vanished into the deeper dark. He never stayed in one place. He never fired twice from the same angle. That was why he survived. And it was why, by the end of those 3 days, German command issued a new order. Do not engage the archer alone. Avoid the northern woods unless necessary. That was when Peter realized something odd. The enemy was now more afraid of his bow than their own guns. By the third morning, the forest felt different. German movement slowed. Their shouting patrols vanished. Even the sound of distant engines went quiet. It was as if the entire front line had pulled back and left a bubble of untouched silence around Peter's hunting ground. He didn't know it yet, but word had spread far beyond this area. Officers whispered about him in tents. Infantry joked nervously about him at fires. Some called him the hunter. Others called him the ghost archer. A few swore he must be a sniper with a strange custom weapon. No one believed a simple bow could be responsible for all of it. But the seventh kill changed everything. It happened just after sunrise. A German sergeant and 2 privates moved through the trees, following a narrow animal trail. They weren't searching anymore. They were retreating from the sector. Their faces showed exhaustion and sleepless terror. Peter watched them from a slope above. He wasn't hunting now. He was preparing to relocate. But when the sergeant stopped to rest, Peter noticed a small detail. The sergeant carried a map case. Peter knew what that meant. Routes, supply positions, command notes. Priceless. He lowered himself behind a fallen log and waited for patrol to step into a clearing. The men paused to check their bearings. The sergeant opened the map case. For a moment, his chest was exposed. Peter drew the string back until his shoulder burned. He fired. The arrow hit the sergeant squarely, knocking him backward into the leaves. The 2 German privates screamed and fired blindly into the trees. Bullets tore through branches. Bark exploded around Peter's cover. The air filled with the smell of gun smoke. Peter stayed still. He waited until their magazines emptied. Silence followed. A frightened silence. The kind that makes grown men breathe like wounded animals. Peter circled around behind them, moving low through brambles and roots. This wasn't a hunting shot. This was survival. He rose from the brush just long enough to fire once. A clean hit. One private collapsed. The last soldier didn't fight. He threw his rifle aside and ran so fast he tripped twice before disappearing down the trail. Peter recovered the map case and slipped deep into the woods, heading for Allied lines. That 7th kill was the last one he claimed with the bow in those 3 days. But it was the one the soldiers remembered. A sergeant with intel taken down cleanly. A patrol broken by a single silent weapon. A bow that belonged in a museum being used like the deadliest tool on the front. By noon, the story had already changed. Rumors do that. Someone heard he killed 10. Another heard 15. A few swore they saw him leap between trees like a shadow. Peter didn't care. He had what he came for. He had proof that the old ways could still win a war. Peter reached the Allied lines just before dusk. The woods behind him glowed with the last light of the day, and for the first time in 72 hours, he wasn't being hunted. 2 MPs spotted him first. Their rifles snapped up, then dropped when they recognized the tattered uniform and the strange weapon strapped across his back. "Is that a bow?" one of them asked. Peter didn't answer. His legs were shaking too much to waste breath. The MPs guided him toward a field tent that served as a temporary command post. Inside, a handful of officers crowded around a table covered in maps, coffee cups, and casualty reports. When Peter stepped in, every head turned. He looked like someone carved out of the forest itself. Clothes torn, face streaked with dirt, hair stiff from dried sweat, and the bow, the old wooden recurve, hung across his shoulder like something pulled out of a forgotten century. Lieutenant Colonel Mason, a solid man with deep-set eyes and a voice that never rose above a steady rumble, approached him. "Private Peters," Mason said, "we heard you were missing." "A beat. Then we heard rumors about a ghost." Peter set the map case on the table. "Sir," he said quietly, "I brought something back." The officers gathered around as Mason opened the flap. Inside were German supply routes, timetables, fuel movement notes. All of it handwritten, high-level, and current. Mason whistled under his breath. "Where'd you get this?" "Sergeant," Peter said. "I took it off him before the patrol pulled back." The room fell silent. Everyone knew what that meant. A sergeant didn't carry frontline clutter. He carried intel. And taking him down alone, with a bow, was the kind of thing soldiers joked about, not something anyone expected to hear in a real debrief. A young captain leaned in. "How many were there?" Peter hesitated. 7. One of the officers coughed. 7 confirmed? Peter nodded. The men stared at him with something between disbelief and respect. Not admiration. Not yet, but the kind of quiet acknowledgement soldiers give someone who survived the impossible. Mason closed the map case and set both hands on it. "This just changed tomorrow's plan," he said. "You may have saved an entire flank." Peter didn't feel pride. He felt empty, exhausted. The bow weighed on him more than his gear. When he finally sat down on a crate by the tent wall, he felt the reality of the last 3 days hit him all at once. The silence between the officers grew thick. Finally, Mason stepped away from the table. "Peters," he said, "get some rest. We'll talk more in the morning." Peter stood to leave, and then stopped when Mason added, almost offhand, "And clean that bow. If you're going to carry that thing into a real fight again, it deserves proper care." Peter looked back. The colonel wasn't joking. The bow wasn't curiosity anymore. It was a weapon. Peter slept for almost 12 hours. When he woke, the rain had stopped and the whole camp buzzed with unusual energy. Jeeps rolled back and forth. Runners moved between tents. Radios crackled nonstop. Something was shifting along the front. He stepped outside and stretched. His muscles ached from moving in the forest for 3 days straight. His hands were still raw from drawing the bowstring again and again. But his mind was clear. That was new. A corporal waved him over to the command tent. "Colonel wants you," he said. Inside, Lieutenant Colonel Mason and two other officers stood around a new map spread across the table. Fresh pencil marks circled routes that weren't there yesterday. German supply positions were crossed out. Arrows showed gaps opening in the line. All of it came from the documents Peter had brought back. Mason nodded for him to step closer. "Peters," he said, tapping the map with the back of his pencil. "Your intel confirmed something big. The Germans are shifting fuel east to support a counterattack. Without that fuel, they're stuck." Peter scanned the markings. "Sir, that route." "Exactly," Mason said. "We can hit it before they reinforce it." Peter waited, not sure what this had to do with him. Then Mason picked up a thin file and handed it to him. "Your after-action report." I read every line. "So, did the division commander." He paused. "Most men don't come back from what you walked into." Peter didn't say anything. There wasn't anything to say. Mason went on. "The way you moved behind their lines, the shots you took, the way you kept them off balance." He set the file aside. "You're being reassigned." That word hit harder than any bullet. "Reassigned, sir?" Mason nodded. "To a special reconnaissance group. Behind the lines work. Small teams. Silent insertion. Close contact." He looked at the bow on Peter's back. "They think your chosen weapon might have value for certain missions." Peter almost laughed, but Mason wasn't joking. None of them were. "You want me to fight with the bow?" Peter asked. One of the officers, a tall major with wire-rimmed glasses, answered instead. "We want you to use what you're naturally good at. You've already proven the weapon works under pressure. Silence has value. Fear has value." He checked his notes. "The Germans believe a sniper is hunting them. They have no idea it's something older." Peter absorbed that. Older, primitive, simple, but effective. Mason leaned forward. "This isn't about glory. You'll be alone sometimes, or in pairs. Missions won't always make sense. You'll see things you can't talk about." He paused. "Are you willing?" Peter looked down at the bow. The grip was worn smooth. The limbs were scratched. 3 days had turned it into something more than a hobby tool. It had become a part of him. "Yes, sir," he said quietly. "I'm willing." Mason nodded. "Good. Then gear up. You leave tonight." Peter blinked. "Tonight?" "Orders came fast," Mason said. "Command thinks this window is narrow. If you pull this off, the enemy's right flank collapses by morning." Peter felt the weight of that. One mission, one night, one chance to break the line. He walked out of the tent and into the fading daylight. Soldiers passed him on their way to their duties, but he barely noticed them. He moved with purpose, heading for the weapons rack. But he didn't stop at the rifles. He kept walking until he found a small bench where he could sit alone. He unstrung the bow and ran a cloth across the wood. He checked the limbs, tightened the grip, adjusted the string, and inspected every arrow one by one. For the first time since the war began, he felt like he knew exactly who he was. Not a hobbyist, not a misfit, not even a soldier. Something else. A hunter. And tonight, he was going back into the dark. Peter left the camp just after sunset. The sky still held a faint line of pale blue on the horizon, but the forest ahead was already turning black. A jeep dropped him off near a dirt track that ran between two abandoned farmhouses. From there, he walked alone. The bow was slung across his back. A small pack held rations, wire cutters, a compass, and a new map corrected with the intel he had returned. Command wanted him to slip through a weak point in the German line, move toward the fuel route, and confirm the convoy's location. If he could sabotage something along the way, even better. But the real mission was simple. Find the truth. Get it back alive. The forest grew thicker as he moved deeper. Branches scraped at his sleeves. The ground turned soft with fallen needles. Every few minutes he stopped to listen. The night was quiet except for the distant rumble of trucks somewhere far off. Too far to track by ear alone. He kept moving. An hour later, he reached the first German outpost marked on the map. A shallow trench, mostly abandoned. 2 helmets sat on the ground beside a burnt-out stove. Whoever had been here left fast. Maybe they were already feeling the pressure. Maybe rumors of the ghost had reached even this side. Peter crouched and studied the footprints around the position. The mud showed recent movement. Heavy boots. At least 6 men. Heading east. Right direction. He followed the tracks through a tangle of brush, staying low. Every step felt louder than it should. Every breeze felt like it carried danger. Then he saw the light. A faint shimmer behind the trees. Lanterns. Headlamps. Movement. Peter dropped flat and crawled to a ridge overlooking a narrow valley road. And there it was. A German fuel convoy. Dozens of trucks, each stacked with barrels. Machine gun teams posted on the hills. Officers pacing near a radio set. This wasn't a small transfer. This was a lifeline for front. And they were preparing to move at dawn. Peter felt his pulse slow. His mind sharpened. This was why command rushed him back so quickly. If this convoy got through, the enemy counterattack would hit the Allies within 12 hours. He studied the guards, the road, the spacing of the trucks. He wasn't here to take out the whole convoy. That would be suicide. But he might be able to stop it. His eyes drifted to a small bridge just ahead of the first truck. Old stone. Narrow. A single weak point holding up the whole valley route. If that bridge collapsed, the convoy wouldn't move for days. He checked his pack. He didn't have explosives. That wasn't his job. But he did have something else. A bow. A body that moved silent as the dark. And the willingness to get close enough to make a difference. He slid down the ridge, keeping to the shadows. German voices drifted toward him. The fumes of gasoline hung in the cold air. He could hear an officer barking orders to warm up the engines. Peter moved along the tree line until he reached the side of the bridge. The stone supports were old and cracked. Not much force needed. Just the right kind of hit in the right spot. He knocked an arrow, breathed out, and aimed for a thin wooden wedge driven between 2 stones, likely used during a quick repair. It was barely visible in the moonlight. He pulled the string back. Closer, closer. Then a twig snapped behind him. Peter froze. A flashlight beam cut through the trees. A German sentry stood 20 feet away, rifle half raised, eyes widening as he processed what he was seeing. Not a fox, not a stray civilian, a man with a bow. Peter had 1 second to decide. He took it. The sentry's breath caught in his throat. For a split second, he didn't shout, didn't fire, didn't move. He just stared, confused, at the shape crouched near the bridge with the bow drawn tight. That hesitation saved Peter's life. He released. The arrow across the space fastened the guard could raise his rifle. It hit square in the collarbone, dropping him with a choked gasp. The rifle clattered against the rocks. Peter caught it before it hit the ground again. But the sound was enough. A voice called from the road. Another answer from the tree line. Boots stomped. A flashlight swung toward the bridge. Peter grabbed the fallen sentry by his vest and pulled him into the brush. He needed seconds. Just seconds. Because the rest of the convoy didn't know what had happened yet, and he still had a shot at the bridge. He slipped back to the stone edge. More shouts rose behind him. Someone was calling in German. "Where are you?" "Report." He didn't have time to think about the body cooling behind him. He didn't have time to wonder if someone had seen the arrow fly. He didn't even have time to breathe. He knocked a second arrow. But this time he didn't aim for the sentry. He aimed for the wooden wedge again. The small piece of lumber hammered deep into the cracked stone, the weak point that held the whole crossing together. He drew the string all the way back. His fingers trembled. His shoulders burned. Shadows moved behind him. A flashlight beam passed inches from his leg. He fired. The arrow struck the wedge with sharp crack. The piece didn't break. It shifted. The sound of stone grinding echoed under the bridge. Pebbles fell. Dust slipped through the cracks like sand through fingers. The Germans heard it. 2 soldiers rushed to the bridge, shouting in confusion. One leaned over to look at the shifting stones. Peter already had his 3rd arrow out. He fired again. This one hit the wedge at a slightly different angle. It didn't need to bury itself in the wood. It just needed to push. The wedge snapped free. For a breath, nothing happened. Then the right side of the bridge sank an inch. Then 2. Then the whole support groaned like something waking from a nightmare. A German officer yelled for everyone to get off the bridge. Too late. The stone arch folded inward with a deep, rumbling collapse. Rocks crashed into the ravine below. Dust shot up from the impact. The first truck slammed on its brakes and skidded sideways. The second truck plowed into it. Barrels rolled off and burst open, spilling fuel into the dirt, and the entire convoy screeched to a halt. Peter didn't wait to admire the damage. He turned and sprinted into the tree line, just as machine gun fire tore through the bushes behind him. Tracers lit up the night. Branches exploded around him. A round grazed his sleeve, ripping the fabric. He ducked behind a fallen trunk and crawled through a tangle of roots. Voices chased him. Footsteps thudded closer. Flashlights swung wildly, cutting through branches. Peter kept moving. He knew the forest better than they did. He knew how to vanish. He slipped between two thick clusters of pine, rolled under a dead limb, and went still. 2 German soldiers ran right past him, shouting orders into the dark. Peter held his breath, waited, listened. The forest swallowed the noise. The soldiers drifted off. The boots faded. Then, at last, silence. Peter lay there in the soft earth, chest heaving, fingers still gripping the bow. He had just stopped the convoy. He had changed the night. But he wasn't safe yet. The entire valley was awake. Patrols would sweep the woods all the way to the frontier. Dog teams might follow. Radio chatter would tighten the net until morning. He closed his eyes for 1 second. Then he forced himself up. The mission wasn't over. He still had to get back alive. Peter moved through the forest with a single thought: get back to Allied lines. Every snapped twig, every rustle of leaves, felt amplified in the dark. The forest that had been his ally for 3 days now seemed alive with danger, each shadow a potential threat. He followed the ridge he had memorized earlier, keeping low and moving slow. The moon, partially hidden behind clouds, cast fractured light across the ground, making every root and stone visible just enough to avoid stumbling. His boots left almost no trace, but he knew the Germans were combing the valley. One wrong sound could undo everything. A distant shout froze him in place. Footsteps echoed off the trees. Peter pressed himself against a hollowed log and held his breath. The voices passed, confused, lost in fog. The men didn't see him. They didn't hear him. A surge of relief coursed through his body. But he didn't relax. Not yet. He approached the creek he had crossed 3 days before. Water ran low, murmuring quietly. Peter paused, drinking a sip directly from the stream. The chill cut through his heat and sweat, reminding him he was alive. He pressed on. Hours passed. The terrain grew familiar. Fallen logs and twisted roots marked the border between enemy and friendly territory. Peter's pace quickened. He felt the pull of safety, yet he knew he wasn't safe until he crossed the line entirely. Then, from the corner of his eye, movement. Figures stepping cautiously through the underbrush. Not Germans. Allied soldiers. Scouts moving toward the forest. Relief slammed into him, but instinct held him still. They were too far to identify, too alert to trust blindly. He called out softly in the lowest whisper, "Allied, over here." A flashlight flickered. A hand lifted. Recognition in the eyes of a young scout. Relief spreading across his face. Peter emerged from the shadows, and in a few 10 seconds he was surrounded, checked for wounds, questioned quickly but kindly. The scouts led him along a narrow path until the first Allied outpost came into view. Peter stopped at the edge, took a deep breath, and finally allowed himself to feel the weight lift. He had crossed the forest. He had survived the night. He had stopped the convoy. Yet even as he stepped into the small camp, the adrenaline didn't fully leave. He knew the Germans would regroup. They would repair the bridge, reroute convoys, and increase patrols. The war wasn't over. Not by a long shot. But for these 3 days, one man with medieval bow had become a force the enemy feared. Silent, unseen, unstoppable. Peter wiped the dirt from his hands, unstrung his bow, and let himself smile faintly. He had done more than survive. He had rewritten the rules for what a single soldier could achieve. And as dawn broke over the valley, the rumble of distant trucks still echoed faintly. Peter didn't flinch. He had changed the night. Now the Allies would change the day.